Order. Order. Whip to move the adjournment.
I beg to move that the sitting be now adjourned.
The question is that the sitting be now adjourned, and this morning's very important debate is entitled Education of Children with Cerebral Palsy, to be led by Mr. Mark Hoban.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hollowbone, and can I first of all thank my honourable friend, the member for Blackpool North and Cleveland, for securing this debate and very generously asking me to open it. My first event as a Member of Parliament was a fundraising evening for the Rainbow Centre, a charity set up by parents in my area to enable their children with cerebral palsy to benefit from conductive education, a therapy pioneered in the Peta Institute in Hungary. Now, at this point, Mr. Hollowbone, the Rainbow Centre was above a carpet shop in the centre of Fareham. It wasn't the most salubrious premises, but it demonstrated, I think, the commitment of parents. They were prepared to come there during the week and at weekends, often carrying their children upstairs to benefit from the education provided there. And children came from as far afield as Hampshire, Sussex, Dorset, Wiltshire and the Isle of Wight. Now the Rainbow Centre is in a purpose-built building in Fareham, is able to offer support to more parents and their children, as well as using the techniques of conductive education to help adults with MS, Parkinson and those who've had strokes. Now, my engagement with the Rainbow Centre led to me becoming involved in a parliamentary inquiry supported by Action Cerebral Palsy, an umbrella organisation for charities across the country supporting children with cerebral palsy. My honourable friend, the member for Blackpool North and Cleveland, has led this inquiry, and a final report will be published later next month. Now, let me say a little bit about cerebral palsy, as I think it sets some of the context of my later remarks. It is a motor disorder caused by damage to the immature or developing brain that occurs before, during or immediately after the birth of the child. In the UK, 1,800 children, around 1 in 400 births, develop cerebral palsy. And it's a condition that affects those from all social backgrounds and ethnic groups. Now, at some point very early in life, either while the baby is growing in the womb, during birth, or shortly after, something happens to interfere with the normal development of the brain or to injure the brain tissues. This abnormal development or injury disrupts the nerve signals that are sent along neural pathways between the brain and the muscles, leading to problems with movement, posture and coordination as the child develops. This is called cerebral palsy. As cerebral palsy is a condition of very early childhood, the implications for the developing child cannot be ignored. During the formative years, the central nervous system develops at a rapid pace, enabling the child to learn, explore and connect with the social environment. It is during these crucial early years that the ability to learn is developed. Children with cerebral palsy will be hindered to varying degrees in the process as they battle to learn fundamental skills related to symptoms. Therefore, cerebral palsy should, to a significant extent, be considered as a problem of learning rather than a problem of functioning or communicating. Early identification of cerebral palsy and early intervention can help tackle the problems of movement, posture and coordination. Between the ages of 0 and 2, a child has a high degree of neuroplasticity, which with appropriate programs can be harnessed to remap the neural pathways between brain and muscle to enable children to overcome problems of movement, posture and communication. I've seen for myself, Mr. Hollowbone, the huge progress children have made at the Rainbow Centre through early intervention. Children whose parents were told they couldn't walk now can. Children who were said to have high degrees of dependency are now independent. Everyone who's been to the Rainbow Centre and similar centres across the country comes away moved by the sight of children, their parents and educators working together through an educational programme that helps children improve their motor skills and rebuild those neural pathways. We can make adaptations to accommodate the physical symptoms of cerebral palsy, such as ramps for wheelchairs. But it is so much more powerful and rewarding to work with children and rebuild those neural pathways so those ramps simply aren't needed. Now, through the inquiry, there have been a number of recurring themes. Problems around early identification, and once CP has been identified, more parents have to fight to get the right support for their children than find it easy to obtain that right support. poor signposting to centres offering appropriate programmes, a reluctance by some local authorities, including Hampshire County Council, to support the work of specialist providers, and reduced access to specialist services as children get older. Now, in many respects, these issues are not unique to cerebral palsy, and I commend the government for its reforms to special educational needs and disability. Those giving evidence in our inquiry gave warm welcome to the intentions behind the government's reforms, and the reforms are widely believed to have the potential, and I emphasise the word potential, to transform the lives of people with cerebral palsy. The introduction of education, health and care plans, which provide statutory protection comparable to those in statements of special educational needs for young people who are in education or training up to the age of 25, compared to 16 now, was seen as a development of particular encouragement amongst respondents to the inquiry. If services for young children and young people with cerebral palsy are to complement each other, then the plan should facilitate this by ensuring that services are jointly commissioned and provision decided in dialogue with parents. The stipulation that provision in the plans is set on the basis of the outcomes they are expected to achieve for the child or young persons, but agreed between professionals and parents, has been very much welcomed. There is a belief, if this is followed through, and it should create the promised cultural shift that leads assessments for special education provision to be based on a continuing assessment for a child's needs and expected progress, rather than simply a fight over short-term solutions for long-term issues. I want to emphasise particular concerns that parents and other participants in the inquiry had. First of all, I want to talk about the local offer. The local offer is hugely important in the potential it gives to families to gain access to specialist cerebral palsy services offered by third sector organisations. But of course, the challenge will be what's included in that local offer. And let me illustrate that challenge with reference to the Rainbow Centre. Rainbow Centre has applied to be included in the offer for Hampshire, Portsmouth and Southampton. But councils in other areas that the centre serves, such as Wiltshire and Dorset, have said they'll only include it if they have the space available. But this means that parents of children with CP in those areas won't know that that provision is available to them, missing out on the support that the centre offers, missing out on the education that could transform people's lives. And given the nature of the centres dealing with CP, there's not going to be one in every county or every unitary authority. So it is important that a local offer looks beyond the boundaries of a particular council area to ensure that all children with cerebral palsy are signposted towards the right specialist services for them. The issue about the local offer speaks to a broader point about the tension between tailoring services to local needs and a postcode lottery that comes through a lack of national consistency. And I would suggest to my honourable friend that Ofsted, in its inspection of children's services, should look at the local offer and how comprehensive it is. Best practice guidelines should be produced for educational health professionals who work with children and young people with cerebral palsy to accompany the SEND Code of Practice and explain how the lives of children with cerebral palsy can be improved within the framework of the new system. But of course it is reactions like that mean, despite the best intentions of reforms, it's a response to local councils that lead to parents and practitioners telling the inquiry that many years of battling with education and health authorities over support for children with cerebral palsy has left them doubtful whether the reforms will make a difference. The negativity about the potential of the reforms is the legacy of an adversarial SEND system, where parents and practitioners involved have been left battle-weary and sceptical that change may be achieved. There remains a fear that while the reforms could improve the situation for children and young people with cerebral palsy slightly, it will not address the widespread lack of understanding of the needs of children and young people with cerebral palsy that contributes to systemic antagonism, where parents have to fight too hard to prove what support their children need. Perhaps one of the biggest recurring issues from the inquiry was the striking lack of awareness amongst health and educational professionals and people responsible for carrying out the assessments for SEND statements or plans about cerebral palsy and what support children and young people who have CP need. This results in late diagnosis, missed opportunities for early intervention, and a general scepticism from professionals about the forms of support that parents frequently told us that have transformed their children's lives. And I believe there is a need for an awareness-raising exercise. So if cerebral palsy is diagnosed, then parents are made aware of the options available to them immediately from professionals, rather than having to search for them themselves. And added to that, parents who spoke to inquiries said that all too often it was they who were the experts on cerebral palsy, and the professionals they encountered not only provided little help, but actually were obstacles to parents and to their children accessing the best help available. Now, there's a particular concern about early intervention and whether the reforms will do enough to help. The inquiry has built a case for why more needs to be done to support children and young people with cerebral palsy, especially in the golden years, post-diagnosis, for 0 to 2-year-olds, when intervention is at its most effective because of that plasticity that exists in children's brains at that age. But it is also the period where that intervention is the most absent. The inquiry found that children are not getting the special intervention they need during the golden years because there is not sufficient specialist educational intervention available for 0 to 2-year-olds, and where it does exist, health professionals and parents too often are completely unaware of it. And even when they are, local authorities' responsibilities for assessing the needs of 0 to 2-year-olds are not spelt out very clearly in the SEND Code of Practice. This means by the time an assessment is made and support is in place, there is a risk that the opportunity to intervene in these golden years is missed. There was a concern, therefore, that there's potentially an opportunity to significantly improve early intervention services for children with complex needs, such as cerebral palsy, has been missed. And I think there's more clarity required in the SEND Code of Practice. It's not clear how local authorities are involved in the assessment of children's needs prior to the 2-year-old check. And of course, as we've seen, for many children, intervention after the age of 2 is reduced in its effectiveness. I'd be keen to hear from the Minister how the government intends to encourage local authorities to target early intervention, how health and education will be encouraged to work together in the early years. For example, by ensuring that the requirement on health professionals to advise parents on not just the health support available for their child, but also on the educational and developmental support that they may be able to access is followed through in practice. Now, whilst I've discussed the problems with the availability and quality of care for children with cerebral palsy in their earlier years, we shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking if we tackle this problem then, the problem will be solved. It's clear from conversations with parents and feedback from centres across the country that far too many children with cerebral palsy can be isolated when they reach secondary school. Primary schools are often well prepared. Primary schools are able to welcome children with cerebral palsy, primarily because they're laid out on one floor. They're very accessible. And children get around without any issues and take part in all the normal school activities. However, when they get to secondary school, they can often fall through the gap. Secondary schools, by their very nature, are much larger buildings, multiple floors, large complexes, and children with cerebral palsy can often struggle to get around, leaving them isolated from their classmates and often from parts of the curriculum. Children have been unable to take subjects they love because problems with wheelchair access, for example, prevent them from taking part in courses that may be on the first floor of a building where the school isn't equipped to offer access through lifts or ramps. But I think the problem runs deeper than just physical access. Many schools don't have the specialist knowledge to help children integrate, and is compounded by the nature of cerebral palsy. During their adolescent years, young people with the condition can physically regress if they're not able to continue the programs that help them remap and maintain their neural pathways. And I think ensuring there's proper integration between schools both at primary and secondary stage with specialist services can make a huge difference. We don't want to see the advances in independence made in those early years eroded because insufficient thought has gone into the primary and secondary education of a child with cerebral palsy. So in conclusion, Mr. Hoban, I hope that my remarks set out where I think the debate is currently at on support for children with cerebral palsy, based on my experience with the Rainbow Centre, but also my participation in the parliamentary inquiry supported by Action CP. The report, as I said earlier, will be published later next month. And I hope that the Minister will meet with myself and my honourable friend, Member for Blackpool North and Cleveland, and representatives of Action CP to discuss the report and to find a way ahead in which the government can help implement its recommendations so we can improve the lives of children and families with cerebral palsy. I suppose if I think back on the remarks I've made in my speech so far, Mr. Holloway, my views perhaps are coloured by the experience of parents of children with CP. They have often had to fight hard to get the help that their children deserve, help that can enable their children to lead more independent lives than was perhaps first imagined when their condition was first diagnosed. These are difficult battles to fight, so parents do welcome the government's reforms that should enable their children to get the early intervention that they need. But by virtue of being battle-hardened, parents are sceptical too. They want to see the end to the adversarial approach to educating their children. They want to see early intervention in practice, not just in theory. They want to see consistency in the local offer. That means that every child with a CP has access to specialist education, regardless of who provides it and regardless of where they live. Now, they have clearly set the bar for success. And it may be high in comparison with their experience. But I believe the government needs to prove to those parents that these reforms will mean that they no longer have to fight for the right education and health support for children with cerebral palsy.
As this is a German debate nominated by the Backbench Business Committee,